the best minds in wrestling today, and you damn well know it by now.
We know more than Google, always have, always will.
New show, bigger, better, badder, brother.
Twice as famous, twice as rich.
2.0, here we go.
Start the damn show already.
What's up, everybody? It's me, it's the JATBB. I am once again without a co-host. Jimmy Jam Garvin is out somewhere making them scream until they cream. Unable to join me tonight. Things out of his control. He's been with Roadkill all day. So I think he's somewhere where they don't have service, but he's a busy man. He's got all his businesses, and he's got a buddy moving out there to Colorado. He's got to get ready for that. So I'm not going to give any hints on who's moving out there, but there's going to be a lot of pomegranate martinis sold. There's going to be a lot of grinder accounts lighting up once Joel gets out there. So congratulations. But Jamie is busy, so I'm flying solo tonight, but I kind of like doing these solo intros. It's a little fun to, talk quiet, intimate, one-on-one. Tonight, we have a fun show. I had this grand idea to do the year-end awards and bring on Andy Baugh to help us out with it. And I thought, hey, we can cover all the awards in about 45 minutes, maybe do a 30, 45-minute segment with Andy, knock it out. Well, we got on last week and talked for about 2.5 hours and didn't even cover half the awards. So, Jamie and Andy, literally two of, if not the most favorite people on the planet of mine. So, we got together and were able to talk wrestling. It was a lot of fun. We just couldn't quit talking. So, it ran a little long, unfortunately, and what happened is I posted about an hour and a half of it, covered some awards. I wasn't able to post about another almost 2 hours, but we are, in the interest of time, going to scrape that and just cover everything tonight as quick as we can. And instead of starting from the bottom, which we thought was a great idea, we are going to start with the main event tonight. So we're going to break down the big awards. And like I said, Jamie unable to join us. It's going to be me and Andy. I have a new co-host. We'll try it out. And should be a lot of fun. I do have some news. No wrestling news this week. I have some podcast news. I envisioned this week a WrestleMania preview podcast where I would cover everything. WrestleMania weekend has become such a big deal, and I wanted to preview the whole weekend, all the indie shows from Thursday to Saturday, the Madison Square Garden Ring of Honor New Japan shows, the TakeOver, WrestleMania. I wanted to preview all of it, but it's a lot of information, so I wanted to bring a bunch of special guests. So for each segment, for each group of shows over the weekend, I am going to be doing it with someone different. And obviously Jamie will join me for some of those, and if he's able. And it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a big show. I'm very excited for it. So we're going to wrap up the awards tonight. 2018, we're wrapping it up. Next week will be your WrestleMania preview. The week after will be your WrestleMania review for the whole weekend. And then me and Jamie are going to bring back, we have a movie in mind. I'll give you a hint. It is not a wrestler's movie. It's the greatest actor of our generation, one of his movies. And we have a pay-per-view that we're going to review. It's a WWF show. So we're going to bring those to you guys. So next month or so is planned in advance. So we're really excited. It's going to be fun. A lot of fun shows coming up. And then right around the corner, we're going to be in Vegas for Double or Nothing. Me and Jamie will both be there. So we're going to do a lot of live podcasts while we're there with a lot of people. A lot of our friends are going to be in town as well. So it's going to be a lot of fun, man. Next couple months, very exciting. But enough of me talking. Let's get into the 2018 Year in Awards with Andrew Scott Baugh.
Hey everybody, Roadkill here. Weddings should be memorable, but not for the groom's lack of style. That's why our friends at the Black Tux Design rental suits and tuxedos that you'll love wearing at your wedding. So if you end up getting featured on your list of 23 epic wedding fails, for, maybe you overcook your varmint stew, or maybe you overtan your hides, or maybe you didn't bring enough squirrel pelts for the bride's family. At least you know you'll look good for your close-up. Grooms stress about their weddings across the board. I don't know why. I've never stressed about any of mine. I've been through at least 10. I've made my own tux out of rabbit and squirrel fur. I've used fox pelts. But I'm telling you right now, I encourage you to rent from the Black Tux. It'll make the wedding planning process easy. The worst wedding battle I've ever got into with my spouse was she wanted me to rent a tux, and I wanted lab mice white dress for her, and we got in an argument. But the best part about the Black Tux is that they have an easy online ordering process that brings your suit or tuxedo straight to you. Just pick a style at theblacktux.com and request a free home try-on so you can feel the fit and quality before you commit. And if online isn't your style, then they have showrooms all over the country where you can find your fit and plan your look. Online's not necessarily my style. I'm more of a make-it-at-home kind of guy, or go to the store. I'm a face-to-face and a handshake guy. I'd like to do things in person, but if you are an online guy, they have over 5,000 five-star reviews across Wedding Wire. The Knot and their own website agree you won't find another rental experience or designs like the ones you'll find at the Black Tux. Call to action, grooms. If you want your wedding to be remembered for the right reasons, visit theblacktux.com/listen. That's theblacktux.com/listen for $20 off your first purchase. Walk, don't run to theblacktux.com/listen to find a look for you and your crew. Formal wear for the moment. Roadkill here. I recommend it. Personal use, private use. It's not as good as my rabbit pelts, but blacktux.com/listen.
All right, guys, so we're back with Andy Baugh to do part 2 of our awards. What's up, Andy?
Hey, Buck, how you doing, man? I'm glad to be back on.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you. Jamie is unable to join us. He's been with Roadkill all day, and he's just somewhere where he can't do the show. They're either building a cabin or they're on a hunting trip.
So is there not power where he's at?
There's obviously not power. He seems to always be in a place that doesn't have power when we're about to record. But so yeah, he's unable to join us. A small chance he may be able to join us later, but doubtful. So we're just gonna roll with it. Me and Andy know more than Jamie, anyways, and you're gonna miss out. You're gonna miss out on some good takes. I told everyone in the intro that there's a lot of audio that we're not gonna play that we recorded last time, but Jamie has some good takes that you guys are gonna miss out on, including Braun Strowman being a superstar in Japan.
Well, with the Rainmaker.
Yeah, he called the Rainmaker the best drop kick in wrestling. And Cody was the best take. So he had some fun takes, but we're gonna miss out on that tonight.
Hey, that drop kick's nice though.
Yeah, best drop kick in the world. So yeah, unfortunately he's not able to join us, but it is what it is. Me and Andy are going to take care of business. We are very well studied in all these awards, and unlike last time where we thought it was a good idea to start from the bottom, we're going to start with the big awards just for time on this one. So I think we should get right into it. Um, oh, actually, you know what? I want to ask you if you got any feedback on your appearance last week. I know you didn't want to tell a lot of people about it because you're scared of the negative reaction with shit that Jamie says.
Yeah, I was kind of wanting to keep it like PG, maybe a little bit of PG-13. Feedback wise, I got some people saying that they enjoyed it for sure.
Well, that's awesome. I had a lot of fun doing it. We talked, man. It took a long time, but
Dude, we did like 3 hours and it felt like 30 minutes.
yeah, it goes by so fast. So we're gonna try to get through this tonight in a timely fashion, but we also have a lot that we do want to talk about. Um, we're gonna start tonight with the big award, which is. So I do want to say in advance, we're doing the Wrestling Observer Awards. Like I said last week, it's probably the most legit year-end awards out there in wrestling, I would say. And we're also, I don't know about Andy's notes. I know a lot of my notes are based off of things like star ratings. I know before anyone says that star ratings are one man's opinion, but um, it is if a match is rated high, it's rated high for a reason. So odds are a lot of people like that match. But if you don't agree with the star ratings, you can ignore that part of my notes.
Can I say something about the star ratings as well?
Yeah.
I mean, my notes are like they're heavily focused on star ratings, and like I said previously on the past podcast, I don't remember if this was part of the one that was published or not, but when I look at when I'm looking at that 4-star level, anything above that's something that you would tell somebody to go out of your way to see. And so when I'm saying that's just like a high level match that you should go out of your way to see. And that 5-star match is like a once in a lifetime, like a once in a year type match that you just rarely see.
No, I agree. That's exactly how I did my notes. So anything 4 stars and above is like a top level match, and then anything 5 stars and above is like you really need to go out of your way to watch it. So if you hate Meltzer, don't agree with that system, just take our word for it that these are good matches. Anyways, we're gonna start the Lou Thez Ric Flair honorary award, which is Wrestler of the Year. This is previous winners: Okada, AJ Styles, Tanahashi, Chris Jericho, Kenta Kobashi, Steve Austin, Ric Flair multiple times, which is probably why the award is named after him. But this year, the Wrestler of the Year is Kenny Omega with overwhelming 3,594 votes. Tanahashi in second, Okada in third. No one else was even close. I do want to trump you, Baugh, and start because I do have some notes.
Go ahead.
So Omega wins this award. He had a 7-star match with Okada, which a lot of people say is the best match of all time. At Dominion, he had 2 5.5-star matches during the G1 tournament against Ibushi and Ishii. He had 3 5-star matches, one with Jericho at Wrestle Kingdom, and 2 of his tag matches with Ibushi, one against Ospreay and Tanahashi, and one against the Young Bucks. He had 3 4 3/4-star matches, one with Phoenix, one with Ishii, and one with Sonata, which was also a G1 match. He had 4 4.5-star matches, the Cruise match, the All-In match, and another 2 more matches from the G1 against Juice and Zack Sabre Jr. And then he had 3 4 1/4-star matches. So just to recap, he had 16 matches that were rated over 4 1/4 stars.
Yes.
Including the greatest match of all time, probably. He had 5 highly rated G1 tournament matches. He had 3 of the top tag team matches of the year. He headlined Wrestle Kingdom. He headlined ROH's Supercard of Honor, which was their biggest show of the year. He also technically was the biggest draw for the All In show. He had a 4.5-star match on a cruise ship, and he became an executive vice president for his own wrestling promotion, which is All Elite Wrestling. I did the math on this. He wrestled 57 times in 2018, which would give you 28% of his matches are highly rated. So 16 matches, that's 28%. If you subtract 19 multi-man matches that he did, because for those of you not familiar with New Japan, they do a lot of multi-man matches to set up their bigger matches, and those aren't really top level matches most of the time. They're
Those
really
are house show matches.
yeah, they're kind of skippable. So if you take those away, he that puts him at 42% of his matches were top matches. If you also take away the 8 tag matches that he did with Chase Owens for the G1 tournament on his off nights, that would raise it to 53%. If you take away his other 7 tag matches with Ibushi, that puts him at an incredible 69% of his matches were 4 stars or higher. He only had 7 matches that weren't ranked that high. His Jay White match at New Beginnings, his Hangman match in May, his Cody match at the G1 special, which a lot of people hated, and then his other 4 G1 matches, which were against Naito, Goto, Tama Tonga, and Yano. So he captured the IWGP title in June, held it until the end of the year, well, really the next Wrestle Kingdom. He was a big part of the U.S. expansion in New Japan, and even though he's not going to be on the Ring of Honor Madison Square Garden show, he's probably a big part of that selling out. That's what I have, Ball. What do you think?
You pretty much summed up everything that I had. A couple things I would like to add to that is I also believe that the Madison Square Garden show was probably the largest factor for that selling out so fast. I also think with All In, him being announced on the card was a huge thing to get people to travel as well. I think he was a big factor in that. I was looking at some of these things with the Ring of Honor match. They drew 6,500 people. Is that right? And
yeah, which at the time was the biggest show in Ring of Honor history.
By almost double, right?
Right, yeah.
They did 6,000 at the Cow Palace. These numbers have not been done by anybody but WWE in decades. I even looked at there was a match that was rated 4.5 stars that he had against Phoenix at something called Northeastern Wrestling that drew 3,000 people that I had no idea about.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. I was talking to you a couple days ago about this. I really didn't realize how great Omega is until I started doing this research. But we're looking at probably the best year any wrestler's ever had, including Ric Flair, including anyone.
Yes.
He, like I said, 69% 4-star matches or better. If you're watching a one-on-one Kenny Omega match, it's going to be one of the best matches you've ever seen. He has won Wrestler of the Year back-to-back. He won Match of the Year. Well, we'll get to that. He was on the Best Show of the Year. He worked for the Best Promotion of the Year. And all of this was because of him.
Yes.
Dave Meltzer said he's been covering wrestling for 48 years, and that Okada-Omega match, which we'll talk about later, but is by far the greatest match he's ever seen. And you actually rewatched it. We can talk about that later when we get into Match of the Year, but it's just amazing what he's able to do, and you really don't appreciate it while you're living in it. But I think we're watching, maybe one of the greatest wrestlers of all time.
Can I add something else to that as well?
Yeah.
So when I go back and if you look at these previous award winners, a lot of people say that, Meltzer rates more favorably towards New Japan in that he, he's not a fan of WWE, but, AJ Styles won Wrestler of the Year, the Luthez Award, and his, this was voted in by his subscribers. What was it? 2017 and in 2016. 2015 and 2016. So AJ Styles was the Wrestler of the Year in 2015. That was his New Japan run. And then 2016 he was Wrestler of the Year. So AJ Styles in 2018, he wrestled 147 matches, and AJ Styles had 8 4-star matches, and no 5-star matches. So that's about 5% of his matches were going on that high level.
Yeah,
And
it's. Oh, go
um,
ahead.
and I would also like to point, Johnny Gargano had a really strong year, and Gargano, like Meltzer said, there's the people. I think Gargano came in 7th, and so he said this year, with this Kenny Omega year, he said 1 through 7. So no, really 2 through 7. Any of those guys, any other year would have been Wrestler of the Year. So you had 7 people that were having like one of the best years ever, like that would have earned Wrestler of the Year. But Omega just blew everybody out of the water this year. So Gargano, when I was looking at Gargano wrestled 65 matches that I found. And that's very comparable to what Omega wrestled. And Gargano had 5 4-star matches and 2 5-star matches. So that puts him about 11% of his matches were on that 4-star and better. And he would normally be considered for Wrestler of the Year. And you
Yeah,
look at Omega.
it's crazy that you look at a lot of these guys, AJ Styles, Gargano, Ospreay, who a lot of people think are like one of the best wrestlers in the world right now, Ibushi, the year that Ronda Rousey had, all these people. Okada got third at 2,119 points. La Parca, LA Park, he got fourth with 549.
It's crazy.
So that's the discrepancy. Omega, Tanahashi, Okada, and then everyone else is so far. Like, basically what this is telling people is that Omega, Okada, and Tanahashi are on another level.
Yes.
And before we wrap this up, speaking of Tanahashi and maybe even Okada, Tanahashi had a phenomenal year, and in a lot of ways would have won Wrestler of the Year, but if it wasn't for a guy like Omega, I think Tanahashi, for those of you not familiar with him, he's basically the John Cena of Japan. And he had a phenomenal year, a great year for storytelling. The story that they told from him was amazing, but is just overshadowed by how great Omega is. He's on cards with Omega, Okada, and Naito. All these guys putting up 4 to 5-star matches and has to compete with that every night.
It's just crazy, where in Japan, Okada and Tanahashi are bigger draws than Omega. Omega's a big draw there. He's the biggest gaijin, the biggest like foreigner draw ever there, and he's really the only one that's been over like a main eventer that's been a babyface. Normally they're a heel, but so I'll typically, I feel like in Japan, Tanahashi and Okada are more valuable to New Japan in Japan. But when you look at Omega's work rate, which was the greatest, like he's definitely going to be the most outstanding wrestler when we get to that. When we're just looking at match quality, it blew everybody out of the water. And then you look at how critical he was to the U.S. expansion for New Japan, and you look at what some people are calling a failure right now for once he's left in America with that expansion.
Yeah, and what's going to be a big hit to New Japan and that United States expansion with him leaving, which also brings up the point of with him joining All Elite Wrestling and then probably only wrestling a couple matches this year. He's not going to wrestle until May, and then after May, who knows when his next match will be. That opens the door for anyone to win Wrestler of the Year next year. Tanahashi is getting up there in age. Okada, someone who could be the next, he's probably primed for a big year. Gargano may go to the main roster. That's going to hurt him. Ospreay is a heavyweight now. He's going to have a big year. What is your prediction for Wrestler of the Year 2019?
I would say the money would be on Okada, because of where he's at, and how much he's going to wrestle, and how important he is to New Japan. But with Ospreay also moving up the heavyweight, and they're using him as a focal point for the U.S. expansion, I would see him having a chance. Another one, really, when we go is Kota Ibushi, because he was a freelancer until this year. He was not a signed wrestler for New Japan until just now. So they were never going to rely on him to carry business because he would not sign a contract with them. Other people, as of right now, the front runner is Kento Miyahara for the first quarter of the year, but the big things in wrestling with WrestleMania, Survivor, SummerSlam, and G1, they have not happened yet.
So that rolls us right into most outstanding wrestler. A lot of people, including us, when we first looked at this, were curious what the difference between Wrestler of the Year and Most Outstanding Wrestler is. And the consensus that me and you and Jamie came to was that Wrestler of the Year was for overall wrestler, whereas Most Outstanding Wrestler was more of an in-ring performance, your match quality. That's how we interpreted it, so that's how we're talking about it, I guess. But for Most Outstanding Wrestler, it was also won by Kenny Omega. He won by almost 2,500 votes.
My goodness.
Ibushi got second, but no one was even close. What is interesting, well, I guess I'll let you start on this one. Kenny Omega, Most Outstanding Wrestler. What are your thoughts?
I mean, we have said everything. I mean, it's the best year ever, and the margin of his victory between him and Kota Ibushi is even bigger than his Lou Thez, even bigger than this Lou Thez award.
Yeah, it's crazy. He's far and away, like, this is probably the best year any wrestler's ever had. I mean, he far and away deserves both these awards. If you've ever watched a Kenny Omega match, I mean, his in-ring quality is crazy. His storytelling ability, his athleticism, he's on another level. What is interesting about this list to me, I mean, we talked about Omega, but the top 6 vote getters were all from New Japan. If you include Zack Sabre Jr., 7 of the top 10 are from New Japan. That leaves Gargano, who had 5 matches at 4.5 stars or better, including 3 of his Ciampa matches. Walter, who had 1 match in that category, and Miyahara, who you talked about. Just outside of the top 10 are your WWE guys, Daniel Bryan, Seth Rollins, and AJ Styles. And Becky Lynch, who's nowhere near this list, had 2 4.5 star matches or better, which is crazy. So what are your thoughts on the overall list and the dominance by New Japan performers?
Well, okay, so I have an overall list, and I have a WWE list as well, just so we can, because this is so New Japan heavy. The New Japan thing is this is how they make their money. It's by these top level matches that.
Right. Real quick, not to cut you off, but for those of you who aren't familiar with New Japan, they don't have a weekly television show. So they're running these shows, and they tour. They do tours, and they run a big show. What'd you say, once a month or once every couple of months at least? But they don't have a weekly show where they're on TV all the time telling stories. They rely heavy on their match quality. But go ahead.
Yeah, they a lot of times they'll once a month or once every other month they'll run shows, and sometimes the shows are like be not 1, not 2, not 3. That so normally, like, a lot of times there's a not 1 and not 2, so they'll run 2 shows. They could be over different weekends, and then they have a road to Wrestle Kingdom, where it's kind of like house shows, and it's just building to it. That they tour smaller places. Another thing is, like, with Japan, it's mainly Tokyo focused. The transportation there is much different than here in America. It's a lot harder to get around the country. So most of it's centered in Tokyo, and they can go out to some smaller places as well. And as far as the buildings go there, most of the buildings in Tokyo that are used are from like the 60s and 50s and 70s. There's not this state of the art arenas that we have in America there. As far as the awards go, I really thought, before I looked up any of this, I really thought there was a couple of wrestlers I had in mind that would actually compete with Kenny Omega. But as I did my research, there's no real competition. But there were some people who had some fantastic years, and Kota Ibushi is one person that had, and he's number 2 for sure. He only wrestled 69 matches, and what I got that he actually had 20 4-star matches and 5 5-star matches. That would put him at 36% of his matches were 4-star or better. And I had Okada number 3. Okada wrestled 141 matches, and he had 15 4-star matches and 5 5-star matches as well. I had them 1, 2, 3, and for a tie for 4th, I had Walter and Will Ospreay. They were all over the world, and they just put on top level matches everywhere.
Now, let me ask you this, because I also agree that Walter is his matches are phenomenal to watch, and he travels all over. He's had big matches all over. He's worked for many companies this year or in 2018. But when looking at the list of star-rated matches, he only had one 4-star or better match, and it was a tag match, him and Timothy Thatcher against someone at PWG.
Where did I got that he had 8 4-star matches this year.
Oh, I don't know where you got your list from, but that's not what I got.
So that's what we need to take a look. Now, Walter and is, so when you look at Walter and you look at some of these guys from Mexico, there's not as, they're not covered as, so when he's in WXW, not everybody is watching WXW, or like, LA Park, they're saying had this great year, but there's nothing that we can look at to see, and we're not seeing everything that they've done. But the stuff I saw with Walter was incredible.
No, I agree. I love Walter. I'm just saying, as far as the rating, the Meltzer ratings from the list that I found, which was hold on.
I use
The what? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I lost you for a minute. But yeah, so I think I use Pro Fight Database, which collects all the star ratings and puts them on a list.
I used Cage Match, and I counted 8 4-star matches that were Meltzer rated.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe, who knows the discrepancy. Either way, yeah, Walter is phenomenal. So I did want to mention about Gargano. He is somebody who, all the New Japan match quality this year, there's so many great matches in 2018, but Gargano almost kind of gets lost in the shuffle, but he had 5 4.5-star matches or better. His match quality was on another level this year as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. He's definitely the wrestler of the year in WWE for sure.
Oh yeah, by far. Which I hate to see him go to the main roster, because it's gonna be really hard for him to repeat that.
Yes, he won't have that opportunity. The casual fan base isn't going to care about Johnny Gargano, and Vince is not going to care about Johnny Gargano.
Yeah, it's a bummer for him, but that's what they do there. You're in NXT and you move up, so it is what it is.
I mean, we've seen this. I mean, since I've been watching wrestling for the past 5 or 6 years, this is what happens almost every single time.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to add before we move on?
Yeah, as far as I'll talk about. I listed out some of the WWE guys that had great years, and Johnny Gargano was my number 1. And when I went through and looked, Buddy Murphy, I think, was the second best wrestler as far as match quality goes in WWE this year. And I heard over and over, Buddy Murphy is killing it. But he had, when I looked on Cage Match, I counted 9 4-star matches on 205 Live that nobody saw.
Which is crazy. I mean, I agree. I can't remember if we talked about it on the podcast we posted, or the mystery podcast now, or the hidden podcast, but Buddy Murphy is a guy who no one watches 205 Live, but every review of every WWE pay-per-view, you hear about how the Buddy Murphy match was maybe the best match on the show.
And nobody watches it.
Yeah, because it's usually on the pre-show, and it just sucks, man, for these guys. And that's probably a place that Gargano is headed, is 205 Live, which him and Buddy Murphy are gonna have killer matches, but man, these guys are performing so well, and no one's watching it. It's crazy.
Yes, I mean, I couldn't believe how good of a year I just, before we got on this podcast, I was like, let me look him up and see what he did this year. And I was blown away with how great of a year he actually had in the ring. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in WWE, really.
Yeah, it's crazy. All right. Next tag team of the year. Obviously, former winners, Midnight Express, Christopher Daniels, Frankie Kazarian on here. Miz and John Morrison are somehow on here. Briscoe brothers, obviously. Bunch of Japanese team. The Steiner brothers, the Rockers. But this year, for the record, 5th year in a row, the Young Bucks have won by 2,000 votes. Second place, Kenny Omega and Kota Ibushi, who some don't even consider a real tag team, but we can get into that. I will say, for those of you who know me personally, I'm one of the biggest Young Bucks marks out there, but I'll try to control myself while talking about this and being as impartial as possible. But they won 5th year in a row. The only team that came close, Midnight Express, had a 3-year run from 1986 to 1988 that they won, but the Young Bucks had a 5-star match against the Golden Lovers at Strong Style Evolved. They had a 4 3/4 star match against the Briscoes at Best in the World. They had 6 different 4.5-star matches, including their Ladder Wars match with SCU and the Briscoes, their All-In match, the Cruise Ship match, a PWG match against the Rascals and Matt Riddle and Jeff Cobb, their Supercard match where they teamed up with Flip against SCU, and then their Dominion match against Evil and Sonata. So they had some really great matches this year. But what they're most known for, I think, is not their in-ring work, but what they do outside the ring. Of course, they have the biggest Pro Wrestling Tees store out there. They have the Being the Elite YouTube show, which has just grown so much in 2018. It's a show that they make themselves, and they are able to really make stars out of a television show that they put on YouTube. I mean, you look at guys like Flip Gordon or Hangman Page, who became a star because of this YouTube show. SCU,
you can count.
SCU has reemerged. Yeah, go ahead.
You could put Skrull and Cody as becoming much bigger stars because of Young Bucks as well.
Yeah, and SCU, who have been around for a long time, but they have reemerged as big stars because of this show. And of course, Being the Elite led to doing All In, their own show that Cody and the Young Bucks put on themselves, which was hugely popular. And then that, of course, led to All Elite Wrestling. And so there you go, Young Bucks Tag Team of the Year. What do you have to say?
I didn't get into this earlier, but I actually put Young Bucks as number 4 on my Lou Thez list for the Lou Thez Award because of things you just said, because they had a great year in the ring. And also just how big of a draw power they were and how important they were for wrestling in general, especially for wrestling not in WWE. I mean, if it wasn't for the Young Bucks, I don't think wrestling would be as hot as it is in the U.S. right now.
Oh, I agree totally. And like I said, I'm like one of the biggest Young Bucks fans in the world, but I have never really looked at the Young Bucks as like their matches are must see. I just really appreciate what they do for wrestling, but with all the outside stuff. But when I looked and did my research, it's crazy how many good matches they had this year, and especially that Dominion match with Evil and Sonata. I remember it. That is one of their, if not their first match at heavyweight.
It was when they won the titles,
Right?
And I think it was their first match at heavyweight. Yeah,
their match with Ibushi and Omega, which was, one of the best tag team matches of the year, if not the best. The Ladder Wars was phenomenal. they just really, I don't know how to explain. I mean, they're not must see wrestlers, but they do so much to promote themselves. It's never been seen in the history of wrestling, I don't think.
Though, what's also incredible is some of their criticisms, like they can't sell. Matt Jackson, after that criticism, he sold a back injury at Wrestle Kingdom and has sold it in his matches for over a year. Probably the greatest sell job ever in the history of wrestling. And they were known for being spot monkeys, which is just where you just flip around and your matches are meaningless. But after that criticism, they intentionally started working like old school Mid-South wrestling style.
Yeah, they're very good at proving people wrong, if that makes sense. Whatever criticism people have about them, they like to prove those people wrong, and they're just driven guys, man. I do want to mention um, Young Bucks, obviously in my mind, tag team of the year, but I don't want to knock the rest of the list aside. I do want to mention Kyle O'Reilly and Roderick Strong. I think had one of the best years for a tag team, especially in a business that tag team wrestling isn't as big now. Kyle O'Reilly was partners with Bobby Fish. Bobby Fish gets injured. You would think that's going to really hurt somebody like Kyle O'Reilly, but he's able to tag with Roderick Strong and have two 4.5 star matches, one against Mustache Mountain at TakeOver Brooklyn and one against Lorcan and Birch in Chicago. And then they were also involved in the War Games match, which got 4.25 stars. They were one of my favorite tag teams to watch. I mentioned on when we recorded last week, I think the Undisputed Era is the new Horsemen. I think all four of those guys are phenomenal. Some of my favorite wrestlers in the business today. And I thought they had a tremendous year as a tag team.
Absolutely. These are the guys when I first started getting back into wrestling, this was ROH, Undisputed Era. These were the guys that were the face of ROH, and ROH is so incredible at that time. Who do you put? All right, so Undisputed Era on this list, they were number 3, and they had the Golden Lovers at number 2. I was for sure going to put Undisputed Era. They had, they had the 1 5-star match, and they had 7 4-star matches. About 9% of their matches were at a 4-star level or better. They wrestled about 94 times last year. They're just so fun to watch. I enjoyed every single one. They're probably my favorite match on most takeovers. But then I look at the Golden Lovers, and I didn't seriously consider them until they only wrestled 10 times. 4 of those matches were 4 out of the 10 matches were 4-star or better, and then there were 3 5-star matches. So like 70% of their matches, even though there were only 10, were at like an elite level.
Yeah, I would put Undisputed Era second, but it's hard to argue. Like, I get the criticism about them not being a real tag team, and they only tagged really briefly.
Yeah.
Throughout the year, but they had 3 of the best tag team matches of the year.
Yeah.
So it's hard to not put Golden Lovers up there, but I'd put Undisputed Era 2. I'd put Golden Lovers 3. Me personally, I put Tyler Bate and Trent Seven 4, and then Pentagon and Phoenix 5. I think Pentagon and Phoenix are just now coming into their own. Pentagon and Phoenix probably the favorite to win Tag Team of the Year next year, but that's how I would rate it personally.
I rated it the exact same order as you did, with Young Bucks 1, Undisputed Era 2, Golden Lovers 3, Mustache Mountain 4, and Lucha Brothers 5. The thing is, with Lucha Brothers, we see some of their stuff, but the stuff going on in Mexico, we don't know how good it was, and we don't know what they've done. It's hard to really see how they could have had the best tag team year ever, and we wouldn't know it.
Yeah, and they also, I feel like, are just now kind of getting into their prime. I think Pentagon had a good singles year in 2018, but
Phoenix did too.
Yeah, and so I think the Lucha Bros are just kind of now getting into their prime as one of the great tag teams. And I did also want to mention, honorable mention, in my opinion, that I'd like to talk about. Not a lot of people watch Impact or get to watch Impact, but I think LAX is phenomenal. and they had some really, really good matches this year. Usos, for being in WWE, are one of the best tag teams in the world. And one of my personal favorites, the Briscoe brothers, who, after all these years, are still putting on killer matches.
Yep. I mean, same thing. I wanted to, just mention the Usos and Briscoes as well. I have not seen LAX much, but I would like to see them. Minoru Suzuki and Zack Sabre Jr. is also a good tag team. I think they're featured more regularly in RPW.
Yeah, they are. And LAX, if you get a chance to watch, I feel like they're phenomenal. And LAX will be facing the Rock and Roll Express at Joey Janela's Spring Break, which is insanely entertaining in my opinion.
That's got Blake Wilson written all over it.
Yeah, Blake Wilson hates Joey Janela's Spring Break for some reason. I don't get it, but I don't know. I guess he only watches luchador matches in high school gyms.
It's actually in a Spanish nightclub.
Oh, my apologies, Blake. Next, we have match of the year. If you watch many companies, or if you watch multiple companies, 2018 was a insane year for wrestling matches, for good wrestling matches, and it's really so many matches couldn't even make the top 10 because of how great these 10 matches were. But the winner by really 3,000 votes, Kenny Omega versus Okada from Dominion, June 9th. Like I said, Meltzer said it's the best match he's ever seen. A lot of people say it's the best match they've ever seen. 2 out of 3 falls. They went 69 minutes, I believe. I have a lot of stuff on this, but I'll let you start.
Oh man, we could talk all day about this match.
And I know you recently rewatched it, right?
Yes, I rewatched it, and I started watching it last night, and I finished it off this morning, and it's just watching it again. I was like, this is just incredible. There's just such a fantastic match. I mean, the story was perfectly executed. There was nothing, no botches, no miscues, perfectly executed. The psychology between these two wrestlers is just, it's just insane how in tune they are with each other. The body language of both of them is just, I mean, you think that with all this combined, all these things, you feel like it's a real fight. You forget it's pro wrestling. This seems like they're in like a war. They're really trying to kill each other. So Meltzer. I believe you think it's the best match ever. I think Meltzer does. A lot of people believe it's the best match ever. I don't know if it's the best match ever, but it's one of the 3 best matches ever. And to me, the 3 best matches ever are Okada and Omega, the Wrestle Kingdom match, the Dominion match, and then where was the 60-minute draw at? Was that Dominion too a year before?
Yeah, I think that was Dominion the year before.
Okay, so to me, those are the 3 best matches ever. Now, this is definitely, for sure, the best 2 out of 3 falls match ever. I mean, normally I'm not a big fan of 2 out of 3 falls matches. When they announced it's going to be a 2 out of 3 falls match, I was like, how are they going to be able to deliver with this? Because I've just never loved any 2 out of 3 gimmick type match. I just like a regular one-on-one match with no stipulation. And they just, I mean, it was 3 great matches in one. It wasn't one quick roll up. I mean, it was literally like 30-minute matches or 20-minute matches, separate matches. The first fall when it worked when Kenny Okada tried to hit him with the Rainmaker. I'm talking about the clothesline Rainmaker, and Kenny reverses that Rainmaker. And he tries to flip and roll Okada up, and Okada just sits down on him. And then that's the first pinfall. And it's just like Okada was smarter than him. And then they go to the second one, and Kenny finally gets him in a the one wing angel. And just before that, though, there's just all these tons of false finishes where you thought the match was going to end. And the closing stretch was just fantastic. And he finally gets him with that one wing angel. And then so it's 1-1, but Okada took that one winged angel and he was just dead on the floor, and he couldn't recover. And Gator was sitting there trying to get him up, trying to get him recovered, but he was all dazed. He acted like he was concussed, and he was kind of just on his knees. And all of a sudden the bell rang, and Omega just goes in for the kill and just comes in and does that vicious V trigger to the back of the head. And then he picks him up for the one-winged angel, and you think it's over right then, and you're just so excited. And then somehow Okada reverses that one-winged angel into a Rainmaker, and they just laid there forever, just on the floor, both of them motionless. And then the match it ended up finishing off with Omega just killing him with these V triggers back and forth, just the nastiest ones I've ever seen. Then he sets him up and puts him in the one-winged angel, and 1, 2, 3, it's over. I mean, just a fantastic match. Oh, yeah, and he used, and in that match too, that third fall, Omega, they built to a Styles Clash, which the Styles Clash in Japan is huge. They thought it was very dangerous, and that broke people's necks, and nobody ever kicked out of it. And he used Ibushi was at ringside with Omega, and he told him to do the Phoenix Splash, and so he attempted the Phoenix Splash as well, which is Ibushi's finisher.
Yeah, it's I remember watching this and thinking that this is another level of pro wrestling. Like, other people can't do this. Omega and Okada are just so much better than everybody else. And it might be the best match of all time. I don't know. But I did want to real quick mention some stuff. Well, so this is only the third time in history that, as far as I can tell, that two people have won back-to-back match of the year with the same opponents. The other time was Kobashi and Masawa. They won in 03 and 98 and 99. And then Shawn Michaels and Undertaker in 2010 and 2009 and 2010 for their great WrestleMania matches. But Okada Omega, I do want to, I found this from the Wrestling Observer the week after that match, and it kind of puts in perspective. This is a piece that Dave Meltzer wrote, and it puts in perspective the story behind this match and how well they executed it in the match. But he said that, like I mentioned, he's been watching wrestling for 48 years. This might be the two greatest individual performances he's ever seen in the same match. On January 4th, 2017, Okada Omega had a match that he thought at the time was one of the best three matches he had ever seen, perhaps the best ever. And then on June 11th, 2017, they met again and went to a draw, so it was at Dominion. And at that time, he thought that match was even better, so that might be the best match he's ever seen. And then in August 2017, they wrestled again, which they it's less than 30 minutes. It's a completely different kind of match, but he still considered it a classic.
That was in G1.
Right. And then, so basically since Omega won the G1 in 2017, they have been building to Omega winning the IWGP title and trying to defeat Okada. And finally, Omega would do that during this match. The initial reaction that a 2-year-long storyline had played out perfectly. Suddenly, in that moment, it's clear the decision not to put the title on Naito was the right decision. Held before 11,000 people at Osaka-jo Hall, this was a different level. And 69 minutes and 49 seconds, in the opinion of a lot of people, might have been the greatest pro wrestling match they've ever watched. Whether it's a drama in the match, it's inconceivable to me that there has ever been another match close to this level in modern times. A 2-year chase from Omega's interview after beating Goto to win the 2016 G1 tournament, through his Tokyo Dome loss, his Tokyo Dome draw, his G1 win, and another loss the next day. The emotion of Omega finally winning that belt is something that they couldn't have copied. Um, Omega made it even better with his backstage interview. The Wrestling Observer received the second most number of responses for any show in history from Dominion, and Meltzer read every response, and the vast majority was all the same. I've been watching wrestling, insert any number from 20 to one guy said 62 years,
Jeez.
and this is the best match I've ever seen. That was said by multiple people. I mean, it's hard to argue. When it ended, Meltzer's thoughts was that was the greatest match I've ever seen. Not arguably, and not by a little, but for sure the best match he's ever seen. Is at a level far beyond when it came to emotion, storytelling, and attention to detail. It's almost astonishing watching it. Will Ospreay might be the best wrestler night after night in the game today, but nobody can do what Omega and Okada did that night. It's also fair to mention that they followed three also of the greatest matches of the year on the same card and will still be able to put on a performance like that.
Jericho and Naito was right before that.
Yeah, which was like 4.5 stars. A lot of people love that match. Ospreay, Hiromu was on that.
Oh wow! Young Bucks win that title was on that too against the Not an Evil.
Right. Yeah, Rey Mysterio was on that card. I mean, it's just I can't wait to go back and watch it. I haven't been able to yet, but reading about this and doing the research, it's phenomenal. And to keep people's attention and to tell a story for 69 minutes is another level as well.
I mean, when you talk about these guys, they have gone 60, 69, and then that Wrestle Kingdom match went probably 48, maybe 50-something minutes. No other two wrestlers in the world can go over 30 minutes and keep people's attention like that. There's like what you said earlier, there's nobody on the level of Okada and Omega. Nobody.
Yeah, it's another level. As far as the rest of the list, Omega had 5 of the top 10 matches with 5 different opponents, which is mind-blowing.
Oh, my gosh.
But is there any other matches you wanted to mention or talk about?
Yeah, when I saw Gargano and Almas, that was in Philly. When was the Philly? What was that?
It was in January. It was a Royal Rumble.
Okay, when I saw that match, I thought it was perfect, and I thought that would be the match of the year. I didn't think anything could top that match. I thought that was as good of a match as you could have. And then Okada Omega happened, and it's but from that point on, when I watched it, I was like, that's the match of the year. So I saw it was a great match. Gargano is fantastic, and Almas is fantastic.
Yeah. Gargano, Almas. I remember watching and thinking, holy shit, this is the best WWE match I've seen in probably 10 years. And it was perfectly done. But 6 months later, I mean, Okada and Omega would change the game. It's phenomenal. We talked about Omega having the best year ever. He had 5 of the top 10 matches with 5 different opponents. One of them being a tag team match, the Golden Lovers versus the Young Bucks. The obviously the Okada match. He had a match with Ishii that's on here. He had a match with Ibushi that's on here, and then his Chris Jericho match from Wrestle Kingdom is also on here.
Yeah, I really like the Ibushi match. That was in the G1 semis, and Ibushi beat him, and then went on to face Tanahashi, and right after that in the G1 finals, which on this list was number 2, and Gargano Almas was number 3. I actually had Gargano Almas number 2.
Yeah, I agree with that.
What did you have for number 3?
Number 3, I had the Tanahashi Ibushi match.
Okay,
I love that match.
I thought it was fantastic, and I had that number 3. But what I ended up going to was that Road to Wrestle Kingdom where it was Omega and Ibushi versus Ospreay and Tanahashi. I think that was the best tag match ever. And I put that number 3. And that was just a regular Road 2 match that was supposed to just be like a house show type thing. And in that match, Tanahashi, he did nut. I mean, Tanahashi in a tag match, you've ever watched a tag match with Tanahashi, he doesn't work hard in tag matches. So Ospreay was doing all the work against Omega and Ibushi, and Tanahashi just did his highlight reel, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, that match was phenomenal as well, and it'll be interesting to see. I mean, the list of phenomenal matches in 2018 was just insane. I don't think we've ever seen a year like that.
Where'd you put Jericho and Omega?
I mean, I thought honestly, Jericho and Omega was good, but there's a lot of matches I liked a lot better.
Yeah.
I don't want to say it wasn't good, but like all of Omega's other matches I thought were better, like on this list.
Yeah.
And then I like the Gargano matches better than that. I like the there's a lot of matches I like better than that one, but it was good. A match that got an honorable mention but wasn't in the top 10 that I loved and thought was one of the best matches of the year was the ladder match for the North American Championship.
Yeah, that was
Adam Cole won.
Was that just Ricochet versus Adam Cole?
No, it was a 6-way. So it was Adam Cole, Ricochet, Lars Sullivan,
okay,
EC3, and Velveteen Dream.
That Kento Miyahara versus Zeus match was great too down there.
Yeah, I've watched that one. Yeah, that was good. It was just an insane year for matches.
Now, I do think all the matches on these lists, these 10 matches are probably the 10 best matches of the year. Maybe some of those honorable mentions. Well, I'll pick that tag matches in the honorable mentions, my number 3. But a couple of matches I really liked that didn't make this list, and they weren't match of the years, but I thought were just great matches I enjoyed. I loved PCO versus Walter at Spring Break. I mean, I'd been wanting to see Walter live. He actually had a match versus Mark Davis that was basically a squash match that was in progress, but it was the greatest squash match I've ever seen. And then he went on and fought Timothy Thatcher, and I can't stand Timothy Thatcher. It's just not my style of wrestling, but Walter versus him was incredible. And I was like, I need to see this guy live. And then it was against PCO, man. That's when PCO, that's what made PCO was that match. Also liked, I like Cody versus Ibushi at Wrestle Kingdom. I thought that was Cody's best match he's ever worked. And back in All Japan, I saw a guy named Joe Doering versus Zeus. I love that match a lot, and I like Joe Doering a lot. He's kind of just like Stan Hansen. He's just like a throwback, tough guy type wrestler. I loved Ricochet and Adam Cole a lot. And I also really like that Young Bucks versus Roppongi 3K match where Matt Jackson did the back sell job a lot.
Yeah, I remember that match. He underrated sold that back all year, which was very impressive.
And and that Ospreay versus Riddle match in Scrapper Mania was a really good match too.
Where was when Hangman fought Ibushi? Was that
Super Card of Honor? I have that on my list as one of my favorite matches.
Yeah, that was one of my. I don't know if it's one of the best matches of the year, but that was one of my favorite matches of the year.
And none of those matches I just listed, I think this is the best match, but I really enjoyed those matches. They all had something different about them.
Yeah, and before we wrap this up, I will add that the Walter PCO match that we were at live was just blew me away watching that. Knowing PCO was in his 50s or close to 50 at the time, and what his career has been, and then watching him against Walter and Walter just chewing him up, and PCO doing that moonsault, it was just freaking incredible to watch live. Okay, so next is Best Major Wrestling Show. We talked about it a little bit already, but New Japan Dominion, June 9th in Osaka, won with 579 votes, beat out Wrestle Kingdom. with 290, and Takeover New Orleans with 164. All In came in fourth, which is interesting. We can talk about, but um, as far as Dominion, um, it might be one of the greatest shows of all time. Really, it had, of course, a 7-star Omega Okada match we talked about. It had a 4.5-star Jericho versus Naito match. It had a 4.75-star Hiromu versus Ospreay match for the junior title. It had a 4.5-star Young Bucks versus Evil and Sonata tag team title match. All those with those 4 classics. It also had a 6-man tag that was interesting. Cody, Adam Page, and Marty Scurll versus Jushin Thunder Liger, Rey Mysterio, and Tanahashi. Elgin won the Never title in a 3-way match. Of the 6 title matches, 5 titles changed hands. Show and Yo were the only ones who retained their titles. They won the junior tag titles. Dominion on Wrestling Observer received a 99.8% approval rating with 991 votes for thumbs up, 1 vote for in the middle, and 1 vote for thumbs down. I don't know who that guy was.
Jeez.
Omega Okada overwhelmingly was voted best match, and Juice and Finlay versus Yoshihashi and Jay White was voted as the worst match.
Who was voted the worst match? Juice and Finlay versus who?
Yoshihashi and Jay White.
Yeah, I could see why that would be the worst match.
Yeah, but overall, 4 classics. An unbelievable card.
It's hands down the show of the year. It just the Omega Okada match would almost make a show of the year, and then that Jericho Naito match was Jericho Naito was incredible, and then the Hiromu Takahashi versus Ospreay was incredible, and the Bucks debut on that match versus Olsen Gobernables de Japón was incredible as well. Those are just fantastic matches.
Yeah, like you said, just Okada Omega almost makes that show of the year.
That's 3 good. That was 3 like incredible matches in one too.
Yeah. Second place, Wrestle Kingdom, of course, had Omega Jericho. It had Naito Okada, right? And then Tanahashi and Ibushi.
No, it was Tanahashi and Jay White.
Oh yeah, my bad. Because they did this year's Wrestle Kingdom, they did the same people, just different matches.
I got the card right here.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, it had Okada defeating Naito. It had Omega defeating Jericho. It had Scurll defeating Hiromu, Ospreay, and Kushida for the junior title. It had Goto defeating Minoru Suzuki in a hair-for-hair match, I think. And they had Cody defeating Ibushi. They had Roppongi 3K defeating the Young Bucks for the junior titles. They had KES, Killer Elite Squad, defeating Los Ingobernables de Japón. And then they had Tanahashi versus Jay White.
Yeah, it was a phenomenal show as well. And Takeover New Orleans had Ciampa, Gargano, and the ladder match, I believe. And All In, I don't know how it came off on TV, but we were there live, and it's maybe the most fun I've ever had at a wrestling show. So how did you have these listed in your top 5 or 4?
Well, I had Dominion, Wrestle Kingdom, and All In as the 3 best shows of the year.
Okay. What are your thoughts? We were at All In and we had a lot of fun. What are your thoughts on that? As like, let's say you didn't go and you were just watching it on TV.
I think it still would have been my number 3 show. I watched it on TV too.
Oh, okay.
As well, and it had a lot of. There was nothing bad on that, and some of the matches were better to watch on TV, like the MJF versus Matt Cross match. It came across better on TV, I thought.
Yeah, and like I said, as someone who watches Being the Elite and kept up with everything going on in Being the Elite for months at a time leading up to that, to see the payoffs at that show, even though it wasn't a company, it was a one-time show, you saw payoffs in every match.
Every single story they told had payoff in that thing.
Yeah, and you got to see the Undertaker spoof, the Dick thing. Joey Ryan came back. That was awesome. Um, the Paige Janela match was incredible.
Yeah.
The Penta Omega match was awesome with Jericho coming out, and it was just a lot of fun. It was a
Well,
really really good show. The Cody Nick Aldis match was an
oh,
underrated match.
that was
That
incredible.
the story that was told during that match, and with Cody winning and the history with that belt, it was, and the intros with all of them having like their five favorite people bring them out. It was awesome, awesome show.
That was my favorite match of the show. And
Yeah,
also you got to talk about the Briscoes versus SoCal Uncensored was a great opener, and that battle royale, the over the budget battle royale. I mean, that was the best booked battle royale I've ever seen. Battle royales are terrible normally.
why do you say it like that? It's a battle royal. Are you fancy?
Yes, I'm from the Appalachian Mountains.
All right, yeah. So yeah, anything else you want to talk about with shows of the year?
I like Spring Break a lot.
Yeah, Spring Break. If you're going to WrestleMania weekend, you really need to try to go to these Spring Break shows, man. They are a lot of fun. I know they're late at night. You may have had a busy day, but they are a lot of fun live. Um, okay, so next is feud of the year. I don't think anyone was close. Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa won. I don't even think it's a debate. This feud actually started in May of 2017 when Ciampa turned on Gargano at Takeover Chicago. Ciampa was out with an injury, but he returned to Takeover Philly and attacked Gargano after that incredible match with Almas. It would lead to them having three unbelievable matches, one 5-star and two 4.5 stars. The feud is actually built all the way up to them reuniting, and was supposed to have a payoff at this takeover coming up, but Ciampa had to have surgery and they can't do the payoff. But as someone who's watched Tommaso Ciampa for a long time in Ring of Honor and everything else, it brought him to another level. He was one of the best heels of the year, in my opinion. His heel work during that whole thing was incredible. Gargano put on some incredible matches. It really brought them both to a new level.
Oh, absolutely, man. That might not even be feud of the year. That might be the feud of the decade.
It's the best feud in WWE in a long time.
One thing that might get consideration, and I'm not certain of this, is the Walter versus Jordan Devlin feud in OTT. I bet a lot of OTT fans would say that would be pretty close, especially if you see any of those video packages. You watching those video packages that Blake sent?
No,
They are incredible.
yeah, it got 10th on this list. What are your thoughts on the? It got 7th on here, but the Tanahashi Omega feud with the payoff of their Wrestle Kingdom match this year. Where would you rate that?
That was great, but it was kind of played out more. So I don't think people know about that. I think only the Japanese audience would know about that because that played out more in the newspapers and things like that. And I don't know if the American fans were really aware of that feud.
Yeah, it was something for me personally that I didn't even realize how great it was until I watched like some videos leading up to Wrestle Kingdom this year, and I put it all together that they've been building this for like a year basically. That's the brilliance of Gato, but
Yeah, and
um,
yeah. Can you explain that feud for the listeners?
so basically at the beginning of the year, Tanahashi was like down. He wasn't really at the top of the card. People were talking about how he's kind of because he's older, he's been hurt. Maybe he's like headed towards like being a dad, a New Japan dad.
Yeah,
Maybe he's done, and then
and he was
Omega,
losing every match.
right? And Omega had won the IWGP title. He was on top of the world, getting super popular, and basically Tanahashi was coming out and saying, I don't like where New Japan is headed. I don't like this new style. I don't like what Omega's doing. And so Omega healed it up and was like, Tanahashi, your time's over. It's time for us young guys like me and Ibushi, and you don't relate anymore with what's going on. So they built it as that, leading to their Wrestle Kingdom match where even during the match there were spots that told that story. The big one being Tanahashi complaining about Omega's wrestling style, but having to wrestle that style to try to beat Omega. And
Well,
then the big spot of him putting Omega on the table and Omega moving and Tanahashi crashing through the table, and so him kind of turning to the dark side and then it working against him. I mean, there's just little stuff like that that was incredible.
that wasn't, but even in that match too, to add to that, Omega was having to turn to using the moves of the great New Japan wrestlers of the past. So he was pulling out moves of the past, while Tanahashi was pulling out moves that were current moves. And like going through the table, that was something the table thing, something Kenny Omega has added to New Japan. Those aren't used in
right. So even as they're wrestling each other in the middle of this match, they're both kind of realizing how great each other's style is. Like they've been talking all this shit about each other, but in the match, having to fight each other, they realize why you have to use and do these things. It's just little details that are incredible, that contributed to a year-long story that you just, I mean, storytelling wise, it blew me away.
You might have to put that number 2 after thinking about it.
Yeah, I agree, because it, like I said, once I realized what was going on, and I didn't realize it until Wrestle Kingdom was coming up, but it blew me away how good that story was. I mean, there's a UFC one on here, but I don't know anything about La Parka Rouge, but I guess
I know a little bit.
Okay, go ahead.
I know that was definitely the feud of the year in Mexico, and I know it drew a lot of money, which you would have to consider because of all these feuds on this list. I'll guarantee that LA Park versus Rouge feud drew the most money on the feud alone.
Well, I thought I heard a story that they were supposed to have a hair versus mask match at maybe AAA Mania or something like that, and then La Parka backed out at the last minute.
Yeah, I don't know. I know that La Parka was supposed to main event the WrestleMania of CMLL, and then Triple Mania, which is the WrestleMania of Triple Mania, which is a WrestleMania of AAA. And I don't know the stories, but I do know he ended up backing out. So, that AAA Mania, that might be the worst. That really might be the worst show of the year.
I mean, there's some interesting things that happen in AAA.
Yeah.
But yeah, another interesting thing about this list is Omega is on here 3 times with 3 different people for feuds of the year.
That's just crazy.
So he had 5 top matches with 5 different people, and he has 3 feuds with 3 different people. I mean, he's another level of wrestler.
Well, what about the Jericho versus Naito? That was pretty good too, don't you think?
Yeah. I thought Jericho did real well. I thought Jericho overall really reinvented himself in 2018.
Yeah,
and was really impressive.
So the best of interviews, the Daniel Bryan, Becky Lynch, and Samoa Joe. I saw some of the stuff they did. I didn't watch WWE much, but I can tell you that when I did watch it, it was because I was hearing these 3 people were doing good things, and I would go back and watch some of their promos, and I did enjoy some of their promos. I'm not going to argue with any of those, but I would like to say who I enjoyed a lot this year were Nick Aldis, Jay Briscoe, and that's every year, and then Chris Jericho. Do you want me to keep on going down through each one?
Yeah. Well, I'll just say on interviews real quick. I don't agree with Daniel Bryan. I'm not the biggest Daniel Bryan fan. I know Blake got really mad at me and Jamie talking shit about Daniel Bryan, but he's just somebody I don't relate to, and I don't think he has any charisma at all. So I don't agree with that. I agree that I thought Chris Jericho had a phenomenal year with promos, and I love Jay Briscoe as well. Um, I thought there's guys in Japan and Mexico who cut unbelievable promos that we can't really grasp how great they are because we don't speak the language. Naito is an example. Tanahashi, Roosh. There's guys with a lot of charisma from other countries, but yeah, United States, Japan, Mexico, Europe. I agree with all these. You can make a case for Omega for United States as well, but Walter in Europe by far he was the best wrestler in Europe. L.A. Park. I'm not familiar with Mexico wrestling, but according to Meltzer, L.A. Park in Mexico was like Hogan in the '80s in 2018. So I guess you have to give it to him. So all those MVPs. What are your thoughts?
The MVPs go. I think the U.S. MVP is the hardest one. Is the most debatable one. AJ Styles won it, but I do think, like you said, with what Kenny Omega did, in the U.S. and what he did for All In, what he did for Madison Square Garden, all the different New Japan things and how much they drew, you would have to consider him. I don't know if he wrestled enough to where he could win, but man, you could definitely argue. I would also say the Young Bucks would be a likely person as well. And then Rousey, I think Rousey's somebody who really, as far as MVP goes, I don't know if they would have got that Fox deal without her. She's a superstar. She might not be the best wrestler in the world, but she definitely, I think, made them money this year. I would say she made more money for WWE than anybody as a wrestler.
I would say she's a big part of that new TV deal they got for sure.
So it's almost like because of that and how much money it is, if you pull her out, she might be the most valuable person in the U.S.
Yeah, I could see that.
Japan, who won Japan? Omega, you said?
Yeah.
I picked Tanahashi, and I picked Okada 2, and I picked Omega 3. And I picked Naito 4, and I picked Kento Miyahara 5, and Ibushi 6. And I also want to make, and also after that, I put Tomohiro Ishii. We haven't said much about him, but he's had a phenomenal year, and he's almost like the Dolph Ziggler of New Japan, who's always just putting on. And I'm talking about more Dolph Ziggler like 3 or 4 years ago, where he's always putting on great matches, but he's never elevated.
Yeah, and he's also having a phenomenal 2019 so far as well.
Yep. And with the Walter Europe, he was by far the best wrestler in Europe. He main evented. He was all over the place from WXW, Progress, OTT, PWG, RPW, Defiant, all those places. And actually, is Defiant over there?
No, I think Defy's in Seattle.
Okay. All right. So, he was all over Europe and main eventing everywhere. And I do think the other person I would consider would be Pete Dunne, because he was still doing stuff in WXW in Progress, and he was the face of the NXT UK launch.
Yeah, without Pete Dunne, I don't think you have an NXT UK show right now.
No, I mean he's the face of that for sure, and
Yeah.
he had a good wrestling year as well. But a lot of it was done in Progress and WXW, so people didn't see it.
Yeah. Non-heavyweight MVP Ospreay. He's a heavyweight now, but he's I've heard people. Well, I mean, this would be really interesting award if Hiromu didn't hurt his neck, but Will Ospreay wins. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, I mean he's definitely number one in the non-heavyweight division. He won't be there next year, but Hiromu, like a lot of people said, he got hurt halfway through the year, and he was probably having the better year. I mean, and he's just every match you see Hiromu in, you think he might kill himself, and he ended up breaking his neck. And people told him he needs to slow down, but it'll be interesting to see if and when he comes back, if he's going to have to wrestle a different style.
Do you think with how great the New Japan Junior division is, it's hard to consider somebody like Buddy Murphy?
I mean, before, honestly, if I wouldn't have looked at today, I think Buddy Murphy's right up there. I mean,
There's just so many good junior wrestlers in Japan and Mexico, and
all right. Here, if you're saying MVP, if we're talking about just outstanding wrestling, Buddy Murphy's there, but Buddy Murphy is not drawing any money for WWE. So,
right.
if you were talking about just MVP, then nobody's paying to see Buddy Murphy, unfortunately, right now. So that's where you could say that he is not an MVP candidate.
Okay, women's MVP, Becky Lynch. Controversy here. A lot of people thought Ronda Rousey should have won.
I mean, MVP. I don't know how you can argue against Rousey if we're talking about if what would happen if she wasn't there now. And I don't know if Becky Lynch and Charlotte would be in the spot they were without Ronda Rousey. And I would also put Charlotte in there because I think Charlotte probably had the best year for in ring than any of them.
Yeah, I agree. And they're definitely not headlining WrestleMania without Rousey.
No, there's no way. So they got that. So I mean, I just don't know. I don't see how you can when you're saying most valuable player or most valuable wrestler, she's the most valuable person on that in WWE.
Yeah, most improved, Hangman Page. Definitely hard to argue that, but there's definitely other guys who really, really improved this year, including Jay White, which, Jay White's kind of new, but he had a great year. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm looking down at the list. Who was all on the list?
Oh, I don't have the full list in front of me, but
okay. It was Hangman. Hangman definitely came in his own this year. I mean, you can't go wrong with voting him for sure.
Most charismatic Naito. Kind of hard to. It depends how you consider charisma and what you watch, but Naito is definitely dripping charisma.
Yeah, I mean, Naito, he's just oozing with charisma, and you just see it when he walks out. He doesn't have to say anything. The way he wrestles, it's all just charisma based. And the fans are. He's probably the most popular wrestler in Japan. He's a guy just on charisma alone. He does not need a title to main event and headline a show, which is really important in Japan because they got a guy who doesn't need a title that they can still put on top of a card and sell tickets, which is great because the title is just a prop, and to have somebody with that drawing power not needing that title is fantastic for them.
Yeah, best technical wrestler is Zack Sabre Jr., best brawler Ishii, best flying wrestler Will Ospreay. Hard to argue any of those. Zack Sabre Jr. far and away the best technical wrestler. And I heard Kenny Omega say in an interview, Ricochet may be the best flyer, but Will Ospreay is the best flying wrestler.
And that's the absolute truth. I mean, Ospreay is between Ospreay and Ricochet. Ricochet is the most athletic wrestler in wrestling, but Ospreay's right behind him, just a hair less athletic than him. But he is a better wrestler than Ricochet, and Ricochet is a really good wrestler.
Most underrated Finn Balor, most overrated Baron Corbin. My personal opinion, the most overrated wrestler is Braun Strowman, and the most underrated wrestler, I'd have to think about it. Let me hear your thoughts.
For most overrated wrestler?
For both, overrated and underrated.
All right, I can get the underrated right now. I see that. I'll put underrated as Buddy Murphy. I mean, and I did not have him on my list before. I know we recorded this in the past and we're not going to use it, but man, he had a killer year. He had 9 4-star matches and above. That is fantastic, and nobody watches him. I want to point out Kenta Miyahara. He's not as good as Omega and Ibushi, but he's a tier below them, and he's still in his 20s. He's the guy, the future for Japan, and nobody sees him because he's all Japan, and they don't jump ship like they do in America. So he'll probably stay in All Japan forever. And I also really enjoy the work of Lance Archer. I think Lance Archer is a solid worker, but he's also got a lot of size to him. And he does great tag work with Davey Boy Smith Jr. And when he does singles matches, he does a great job with smaller guys with a classic David and Goliath match.
Yeah,
and Cody Rhodes too. On opponent Cody Rhodes too. He had a great year in ring better than what people say. People say Cody's an average wrestler, but he had several matches that were 4-star or better.
Yeah, I would say for most overrated for sure, Braun Strowman. I just don't. There's just not a lot there in my opinion, and they're building him as one of the top guys. Most underrated, just off the top of my head, I think people like. I agree with Cody. Cody was my favorite singles wrestler last year. I loved watching Cody and Aishi in New Japan. Like you said, is somebody who always has great matches, but it's just overshadowed by all the great performers over there. Yeah, and rookie of the year, Ronda Rousey. Hard to argue.
You can't, based off of having no experience, and she has to practice her matches all the time, but she's done a good job with what they've asked her to do, and she's not doing it in front of 100 people or on the Largo loop for NXT in Florida. She's doing it at WrestleMania. She's doing it at SummerSlam on the biggest stage of all.
Yeah, best non-wrestler Paul Heyman. He's gonna be hard to beat as long as he's doing it. But I know you're a big fan of Leo Rush.
I don't know anything about what Leo Rush is doing. Is he actually a non-wrestler now? I thought he was
Yeah, he's Bobby Lashley's manager.
He's Bob. Well, I knew he was Bobby Lashley, so he doesn't wrestle at all.
Sometimes he'll be in there like a handicap match or something, but I don't think he really does 205 Live anymore. But I don't watch it, so
it's hard. It's hard. I mean, you can't argue against Heyman. Can I count Don Callis as a non-wrestler? I know he's an announcer too, but man, he does some. That stuff he did in the Jericho Omega press conference was pretty dang funny, and how he was wearing that neck brace after it, and a lot of the, like, Minoru Suzuki, he's scared to death of him. He'll squeal like a little girl when he comes near him.
yeah. I would like to mention Serena De La Renta from MLW. She's phenomenal. Not a lot of people get to watch her. But yeah, Heyman's going to win this award every time. Best TV announcer, Kevin Kelly. Worst TV announcer, Jonathan Coachman. I disagree with both of these. My favorite announcer of the year was Don Callis. I thought Don Callis was phenomenal. Kevin Kelly does great work, but Don Callis, I really enjoy hearing him on a show. I think Nick Aldis is really good as well. And for worst TV announcer, I get that WWE is really, really bad, but it's hard to blame one of any of those guys because they're getting told what to say word for word. My vote for worst TV announcer is Mauro Ranallo. I can't stand him.
Okay. Best television announcer is Don Callis. I mean, I agree with that. I love Don Callis. And when he first came in, I couldn't stand him at first, but he has came into his own. He did it quickly, and he just enhances that product so much. I mean, he just enhances it. He's a great heel announcer, and him and Kevin Kelly work great. It's so fantastic hearing them call matches, and they have the advantage of getting to call the best matches in the world. And, I want to also point out, I think Colt Cabana does a solid job in Eon Riccaboni and Nick Aldis. Like you said, I like all of them as well.
Yeah, what about worst?
Worst? I mean, it's when you go and look at all these, it's the micromanagement of WWE and having to do all the buzzwords and having to say lunatic fringe every single time you mention Dean Ambrose, and having to I guess advertise for like the network and things like that. It's just terrible. They always have to do a 3-person booth, which I prefer a 2-person booth. So I think somebody always is kind of left out. Like when they do a 3-person booth, you would have the like a Percy Watson sometimes gets left out. Brian Saxon for sure does. And I don't really enjoy Matt Striker and Jim Ross. I think I enjoy listening to Jim Ross, but he can't call the way he did before. But I still like to hear him.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And Vampiro might really be the worst one because I heard he farted at Triple Mania. I heard he farted and it came through the.
Yeah, I watched that video actually. That did legit happen. You know who else is terrible? I mean, I'm sticking with my Ranello because I mean, he gets on my nerves so bad. But Josh Matthews in Impact is also really terrible. Um,
What is what? How's Callus in Impact?
I haven't been able to see a lot because I think he just started, but um, he's not as good as he is in Japan. But I feel like when he's at Impact, his mind's in other places. If
Yeah,
that makes sense, because he's running it.
yeah,
So it's not as good, but it's still good. It's still good.
okay.
Josh Matthews brings him down. I hate Josh Matthews.
Yeah. I don't like Josh Matthews either. And he just seems cocky to me.
Yeah. Worst major wrestling show, Crown Jewel from Saudi Arabia. This, of course, probably got voted because of the controversy, but when you look at that Triple H and Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker and Kane botch fest for 30 minutes, you can see why. But I'm sure there was worse shows out there.
Yeah, I think Triple Mania might be one.
Yeah, I think Evolution might be one. I can't imagine watching an all women's pay per view.
Well, that was voted in the best major wrestling shows.
I don't know by who. Best maneuver, One Winged Angel. Hard to argue. That's pretty awesome. Jamie also voted for Okada's dropkick, the Rainmaker.
Oh man, he's gonna kill you.
Okay, and that leaves just the worst TV show, which was WWE Raw. If you sit down and try to watch a Raw, and I'm not talking about fast forwarding and only watching shit you like, and then saying that it was the best show ever, like Ben Harris does. I'm talking about sitting down and watching 3 hours of Raw. You will agree that is the worst show on TV.
No, and not just wrestling. You're talking about the worst show in all of TV, right?
Yeah, I'm talking about the worst show I've ever seen.
Well, I mean, it's not wrestling focused, and that it's all storyline based, but the stories don't go anywhere. They'll drop them. I've never seen a storyline play out.
Not only that, but a 3 hour show, even if it's something I really enjoyed, 3 hours a week is really hard to enjoy on a regular basis, and they overdo redundancy as is. It's the same things every week, and it's just terrible.
Do you like it when an authority figure comes out to start the show, and that sets up what the main event that night's going to be?
Every promo I've ever watched them do on Raw, I see 10 minutes that they could cut out.
Yeah.
They sit there and let the crowd react to what they say for about 45 seconds. I mean, I'm gonna get real fired up talking about Raw, but it is god awful.
I mean,
I can't imagine a worse show, but I mean, I know you hate Lucha Underground.
well, I don't hate Lucha Underground. It's just I don't watch it. I didn't even know it existed. I thought it was already done, and apparently it's still there.
It was on Netflix for a little while.
Yeah, I'm sure it still is. When I did watch it, sometimes it would be great, and then sometimes it would just be the stupidest thing I ever saw in my life.
All right, guys, there it is. I know this was a super long show, but we wanted to cover everything. 2018 was a phenomenal year, the best year in wrestling history, in my opinion. I want to thank Andy, who has a busy life, raising kids, to do this with us. I really enjoyed it. I know Jamie enjoyed the first part. So thanks for coming on, man. We're gonna have you on again. And,
Well, man, I really appreciate being on, man. I had a great time. I'm glad we got to talk for a bit. I wish Jamie could have been on tonight. That would have made it just a tad more entertaining. I would have loved to hear.
Yeah, I feel like this was
input.
I feel like this was straight information and overkill on wrestling stats, whereas Jamie would have added a comic relief to the episode. But what Jamie lacks in knowledge, he makes up for in entertainment. That's for sure.
Could you just put in past jokes he's told? Just add them in.
Well, I'm scared to because I want people to tell you about this episode.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was a lot of fun. Like I said in the intro, we're doing WrestleMania next week with multiple people. Maybe Andy Baugh will come back for that. And check us out on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all of our sites. Jamie's doing a Facebook page eventually. Yeah, that's it, man. We'll see you next time.